Thank you very much for being here. This is probably the last panel session on the last day of the summit, so I admire all of you for your persistence here. The title of this panel is Digital Teaching and Learning to Meet Higher Ed Global Demands, and the idea is basically that online learning has dramatically changed the higher ed landscape, both in the U.S. and abroad, and we're going to have some discussion about that with two people who are eminently qualified to discuss it. Sitting immediately on my left is Michael Crow, the 16th president of Arizona State University. By the way, I'm Philip Regier. I am the University Dean for Education Initiatives at ASU and the CEO of EdPlus, which is the organization that advances and accelerates what we do with digital teaching and learning technologies. And so I'm in the curious situation of interviewing my boss. And I've never had to introduce him before, and the only fact I know is that he is the 16th president of Arizona State University. Sitting on Mike's left is Clark Gilbert. And Clark Gilbert, on May 1, assumed the responsibility of becoming the first president of BYU Pathway worldwide. And I'm going to have Clark discuss a little bit about what BYU Pathway Worldwide is. Immediately prior to this assignment, though, Clark was the very innovative leader of a very innovative institution, which is BYU-Idaho. And curiously, I just saw this, he was the 16th president of BYU-Idaho as well. So I don't know what that synchronicity means. Before that, he was the CEO of Deseret News Publishing Company. He was widely lauded as an innovative leader in the publishing industry. Prior to that, he served at a school back east, Harvard Business School, where he was a professor of entrepreneurial management. Last month, interestingly, he published a book called Dual Transformation, which is how a leader can serve in a disruptive and transformative state, and I think that we'll have some insights from that book as well later today. And so if I could, I'd like to start with Clark, and I'd like to ask him to describe for us so that we have some background of what BYU Pathway is, and then I want to ask Mike to describe very briefly what our digital teaching and learning initiatives are at ASU and what they encompass and what their objectives are. So Clark?
Thank you. To give some context on BYU Pathway, let me first describe BYU-Idaho if you don't know a lot about it. It's part of the BYU system of higher education in the LDS Church. BYU, of course, is the flagship school. You need to have a 3.9 GPA and a top 5% in your SAT or ACT score to get in there. And the LDS Church said, we have a growing population. How do we create a new school that can absorb some of that growth but not be as expensive as the traditional higher education model? And BYU-Idaho was created out of that. BYU in Provo is 35,000 students. BYU-Idaho is 32,000 students. But both of those schools, most of the kids knew they were going to go to college or at least had it in their mind for a good portion of their lives. BYU Pathway was created for students who never thought they could go. And it's an entirely separate population. We use online learning and local gathering at sites all around the United States and all around the world. Roughly a third of our students are international, half of our sites are international, and there's about 35,000 students in the program today.
And you have to grow it to what?
A lot bigger.
I have to say I'm jealous. They've got 35,000 students, and I was telling Clark ahead of this that I'm not competitive too, but we have 25,000 students, and
Phil's competitive.
We're competitive. We're online students, and so we're going to give them a run. President Crow, would you describe the online and digital teaching and learning platforms that we use at ASU and their size and what our objectives are?
I mean, our overall objective is to be able to find a way to prove the point that any human can learn anything depending on the circumstances. And what we have is a society right now which has, for the most part, built fixed institutions that some people are able to go to and some people are able to go through, but most people are not. So we still live in a society where we want higher and higher levels of educational attainment because we want higher and higher levels of adaptability. We want a society capable of adapting to all of the changes that our society is producing, and I mean that could be technologically or organizationally, whatever it happens to be. Yet we've built fixed institutions. And the fixed institutions right now are net producing less than half of the people that attend are ever graduating. On a system level, that has lots of success and lots of positive outcomes, but it's also a social failure. And so one of the things that we have is we're not succeeding socially. And so our online programs are intended in the American sense to break down every possible barrier to take, in our case, a world-class faculty, to couple onto that world-class faculty a technological capability that allows them to not operate only in a fixed location, but to be able to project. So we have a world-class engineering program, a world-class faculty in electrical engineering, competing with the best. They have more funded research than Stanford or Texas or Carnegie Mellon in electrical engineering. They have 2,000 face-to-face engineering students, and now they have 1,100 or 1,200 online students working in the first accredited online bachelor's degree in electrical engineering. Well, that means that we're doing something that we could never do before. The kid that went to electrical engineering and their mom got sick and they went home and they dropped out of college, their chance of ever finishing the electrical engineering degree approaches zero from the point of dropping out. Zero. Because of some circumstance in their family, or the 18-year-old kid screws up, whatever, you know, you go to too many parties or you make bad choices and then all of a sudden you're off track, and therefore you are labeled for the rest of your life as a college dropout. So we have this huge focus on college completion in the United States with our online programs through ASU Online. But we also are looking with everything that we're doing to get over, there's some kind of a strange virus or something inside many universities. They think that the only way to do things is the way that they've been done. Well, actually, no, there's fantastic ways to enhance teaching and learning, to enhance teaching and learning outcomes to make things happen. And so, as you know, Phil, since you helped design it and helped launch it, we have the Global Freshman Academy where we're trying to break down college-going pathways. We're trying to engage with students. I'm not going to walk through all of our stuff, but basically the simple thing is we're taking 3,400 faculty members and we're coupling digital expressive platforms around them that will allow those 3,400 faculty, we believe, to have a meaningful, dramatically positive impact on 100,000 face-to-face fully immersed students with us, 100,000 degree-seeking students, so that would be 200,000 students all advancing at the highest levels of academic rigor. So it blows up the entire model of scale in the way that we've organized this institution, and hundreds of thousands, if not more, of other learners that can then have access to anything that we're doing to enhance their own individual life, their own individual learning outcomes, their community, their school, or what have you. So from our perspective, that's what we're doing, and we're making good progress. We have 25,000 online degree-seeking students now. We have several hundred thousand people engaging in our Global Freshman Academy, but we also have back on campus dramatic changes in all aspects of the university's performance. So we have an 85% increase in our four-year graduation rate. We have I guess I would call it a 9-fold increase in the graduation rate of an incoming student with a B average from high school. 9-fold. And so from our perspective, these are outcomes that are derivative of us figuring out how to use these technologies and derive them and partner. We partner with many of the companies that are here at this ASU GSV meeting, and so that's what we're doing.
Thank you.
Phil, can I just expand on something
Please.
Michael said? It's interesting because I know some of your questions today will be about online learning, but I think what President Gross hit on is at the heart of this is realizing potential that was always there. And so many of these students, we surveyed them. It's like, why aren't you going to college? Why aren't you getting a college degree? In our faith background, it's a very important part of our religion. And yet they're faithful in their church and they're not going and getting education.
But the reason is interesting.
And some of them said it's money, but the number one thing that just came over and over and over again, I'm not capable enough. I could never do that. And, you know, as we bring them through Pathway and then they come and take our online courses, we prepare them the way Mike's trying to do with Freshman Academy so they can be successful. Once they get into the online degree program, they perform at the exact same level as our students on campus. And yet, here's a whole population who's saying, we could never do this.
Okay, so I want to pick up on that thought, and I also want to go back to something that President Crow said earlier about this virus that appears to affect universities. You know, this summit is built on kind of the dual notion of innovation and disruption occurring in the ed tech markets and higher education and K through 12 education. In your book, Clark, Dual Transformation, you say that the threat of disruption is also the greatest opportunity a leadership team will ever face. And so Mike talked a little bit about the environment at ASU, but how do you create, if you are a university leader, an environment that takes advantage of the disruption that's going on in higher education?
You know, part of the problem is a model disconnect. People are trying to ingest opportunity through a model that wasn't built to absorb it. And if you look at, our campus is growing very rapidly. You know, it's a 6 to 7% a year growth for a 30,000 student campus. That's very rapid growth. But the disruption through online learning is growing at 20, 25, 30% a year. And if we said we have to bring everyone here onto campus, we'll never do that. And so part of the idea of dual transformation is that I'm going to decouple. I need a lot of innovation in the traditional model, a lot of innovation. But it's going to grow what I've done in an incremental, expanding way. There's a new revolution happening that traditional higher education is completely missing. And you could frame it as they're missing an opportunity or they're not fulfilling their mission to their communities and their students and their stakeholders, but that other people are taking away from them because they're not organized in a way that, from a design standpoint, can absorb the innovation that needs to happen.
I have a feeling that there would be very little disagreement from President Crow on anything you said, but would you comment further?
Certainly no disagreement. I mean, I think the one thing that we have to figure out in our society is that, in which we haven't figured out, which is, you know, it's sort of like along the way we understood everybody had to learn how to read along the way. They used to keep people from reading. Along the way we realized everybody needed a primary education, so we eventually got universal primary education. And along the way somebody said, you know, high school seems to be really, really important, and if you look at the 20th century, it really is, in the United States, the 20th century is a huge, huge function in the United States of high school, and the role of high school and the advancement of high school and the development of a workforce that could be adaptable and so forth. And so we've had this continuous evolution of all of our educational frameworks, and then all of a sudden our economy became number one. We, you know, defeated a bunch of enemies in the mid 20th century. All these kind of things happened. We built these unbelievable research universities, and everybody said, "Wow, those are the cat's meow. Those are it." And then we laid back and we said, "We got it made. We're gonna coast on into home," not realizing there is no home plate. There's just the process, and everything is going to continue to move forward. And you know, what's interesting is that technology is, at the end of the day, a ubiquitous part of every person in this country's life right now. The electricity, everything. And there was resistance to every aspect of technological advance along the way, just like there's resistance to this. And it is indeed unfortunate because this particular type of technological advance is capable of empowering people at a scale and at a speed and in ways that human beings have not had the opportunity to be empowered in the past. So I'm excited that we've figured out how to do this, and we're moving ahead, notwithstanding the slings and arrows that are sometimes sent our direction.
Okay, let me turn to something that I have a real interest in because we haven't been able to do it as successfully as we'd like, and that's
Sorry to keep coughing. I have some combination of bronchitis and malaria.
and I'm hoping it's not contagious. So
I spoke to my wife this morning, and she said she's never been sicker for 5 years, but go ahead. And she wasn't sick when I left.
yes. Well, Clark, let me ask you a question. One thing I'm curious about, you talk about, it's almost like you have a hybrid model. So you have 35,000 students, but you also have 500 locations.
Yeah.
So I'd like you to talk about the locations, and I'd like you to talk about the global need for what you're doing, not just domestically, but the global need for what you're doing. What drove you to do that? And then kind of what trends you see emerging globally around this disruption in higher education.
It's interesting. Michael talks about some of the kind of incumbent inertia and fear of innovating. It's almost, love of convention. All you have to do is see someone who's struggling, who doesn't have access to education, have a 30-year-old Hispanic woman pull me by the coat down to her and say, you thank everyone for what you're doing. And there's not a lot of tolerance left for letting convention get in the way of innovating in ways that will help people.
In fact, it's worse. In fact, it's almost unbelievable that people aren't looking for every possible mechanism to connect to everybody.
It's true, and we see it, by the way, and we talk about it in BYU Pathway as, well, yeah, we've got a surging program in Ghana and in the Philippines and in Sao Paulo, but our largest single pathway site in the world is in Orem, Utah, right between two major universities, capturing people who are being missed by both. So there's...
So what is a pathway site?
A pathway site is a religious building that on Sunday is used for religious purposes and on Thursday nights is used for our gathering. So I've got a built-in physical infrastructure for this gathering to happen. The instruction's all done online. The faculty are all remote adjunct online instructors. They use our campus faculty as the experts for the courses, but delivered through the online instructors. But in the pathway site, we have a cohort. It could be, the smallest pathway sites are 12 people, and the largest have 1,000. And they gather, they work through pre-design activities. They're mostly there to support each other. They're not content experts.
But they're studying chemistry, they're studying
every
math,
topical area.
English,
so the topical experts online, the mentor, the friend, the social connection, the support, the spiritual support is all in that local site. In fact, a lot of what we do is, we try to teach them their potential. For us, in a religious framework, it's their divine potential as a son and daughter of God. If you were in a secular setting, it's just you have untapped upside that you don't know you have. And that happens in the local site. And then the course and the content and the curriculum are delivered online.
So what percentage of your pathway students are inside the U.S. and outside the U.S.?
A third of the students are international. Half of the sites are international. So it means our domestic sites are larger on average. And I'd say, the two big innovations for us is the first one is realizing the early curriculum is designed to build confidence. It's not designed, it's too much of higher education. At a meta level, I've heard, Mike talk about, universities in most of our higher education model are designed to keep people out. And then they say, look how good we are. Well, you took people out of your system. You didn't lift them beyond where they were. At a micro level, just in the student's life, early on, my colleague Henry J. Eyring, who's my replacement at BYU-Idaho, says, begin with the beginning in mind. A lot of us think, well, let's begin with the end in mind, but it's right up front, what do they need to do to be successful? And so much of it is confidence. So the early curriculum is around building confidence and an understanding of why you're doing this. The other curriculum innovation is the worst thing you can do. If someone doesn't think they can be successful, they don't see the connection to higher education to their work life, is stick them in a GE curriculum and say, here's your college math course, right? And so we go through a life skills course, we go through Instead of college English, we aren't teaching Beowulf and the Canterbury Tales. We're teaching basic writing, communication, resume writing, and LinkedIn profile. Instead of teaching college algebra, we teach quantitative reasoning and personal budgeting. And they build confidence in that. And then the very first curriculum they take after that foundational on-ramp curriculum is a certificate in the field they're going to work in, not their GE credit. And then once they complete the certificate, then we move into the GE. But, we all know this data, but, even the, national average for graduation rate is 43%. But if you are in the lower quartile, that drops to 9%. In fact, there's an 8-fold difference between the top quartile and the bottom quartile. You know this data from the Pell Institute. And we spent 30 years trying to provide access to education. We have not moved the needle on graduation. And so even if you triple it or quadruple it, that's what I think you've done that at ASU for the lowest income.
Yes.
You're 4 or 5 times the national average. But that still means more than half aren't going to graduate. A certificate becomes an off-ramp and an on-ramp. If we know some aren't going to make it, do they have something of value that's an intermediate step? Then if they take that, we actually find their incentive to keep going goes up because they see the reward for education early on. And so building confidence in the curriculum and moving to a certificate on-ramp have been two of the big curricular innovations we've tried to focus on.
So thanks. President Crow, coming off of Clark's comments around things that they've done to make students more successful, as ASU has opened its both online and on-campus programs to a wider array of student backgrounds, what has the university done to ensure student completion, retention, and success as we broaden the base of students coming into the university?
So first, we're working in 2 modalities relative to students. So first, and some of you have maybe heard me talk about this before, we think that the great research universities of the 1950s, Michigan, Berkeley, places like that, UCLA, were places that had it right. They had admission standards that took qualified students. They determined what the qualification was to do university level work, which was a set of courses that you needed to take in high school to be ready, and a set of performance in those courses, a B, that would show that you understood the material, and then at least a B average in everything that you did. And at the University of California and at the University of Michigan in that time frame, you were admitted to those schools. No longer. We are operating under the premise that the university that we're advancing, the public university that we're responsible for, will maintain the notion of admitting every qualified student. Now, we get all kinds of rations of criticism and complaints and so forth from others that say, oh, you're dumbing down your curriculum. We're not dumbing down anything. The curriculum is the curriculum. We have fully accredited, high-achieving research grade units across the entire institution. We're vigorously maintaining the notion that the public university should be for those qualified to attend, not for those that you have room for, not for those that you think are easier to teach, not for those that look and sound and feel like the faculty, or might someday become faculty. In fact, they're always completely, unbelievably enamored to find the little clones of themselves. And have you met Phil? Phil's a fantastic student. He's someday going to become a business school faculty member. And so our strategy is the maintenance of this idea of accessibility. The second part of our strategy is that you have to draw from the entire spectrum of the socioeconomic diversity of the society. And we've now set our goal to graduate equally from that entire spectrum also. Our only way to get there is with the use of advanced technologies on campus, advanced technologies online. It's the only way to achieve those goals. The other reason, I don't know the reasons that UC Berkeley now has a weighted GPA for its incoming freshman class of 4.0, but it actually literally seems bizarre to me that if you got a 4.0 and you can get in there, you should go. But you know how many people have that weighted GPAs of 4.0. That's not the cross-section of society. And so for us, all of the technologies that we're developing, all of the tools that we're developing, all of the partnerships that we're developing, everything that we're doing is so that we can advance this model. And this model is built around the idea that so we're a newbie public research university. We weren't a university until 1960. We were an education college and a teacher's college. We didn't begin becoming a research university until 1980. We didn't even make much progress on that until the 1990s. We made unbelievable progress in the last few years on that pathway. But in thinking about all of that, if we had decided to follow the normal pattern for our evolution would be to eliminate the bottom quarter to the bottom third of our freshman class. Our status would have shot up dramatically. People would say, can you believe what they've done at Arizona State University? That Crow, he is a genius. Their rankings have just shot through the roof. And the way they shot through the roof was all those kids have to find some other place to go to college. And that is, at the end of the day, a model which is not conducive to the broader success of society. It may be conducive to the success of this now narrower and narrower and narrower focused university, but it's not conducive to the broader success of society. And so we had no chance whatsoever being able to do the things that we've been able to do, 3 times as many graduates, 5 times as many minority students graduating, all of these things that we've been able to do without the technologies, the innovations, the partnerships. They're the means, as well as a faculty willing to innovate, willing to take on this challenge, willing to understand the importance of this. And I will say that it's kind of funny, like our admission standards for our online degree programs are the same as the admission standards for the university.
In some cases higher.
Some cases higher because of the size constraint. And so we maintain the University of California's admission standards from 1950, 1960 for our online programs. We talk to people all the time, well, how are those open enrollment kind of cheesy programs that you have? This is just the most thoughtless denigration from an individual who has no clue what they're speaking of. I run into these people all the time. It's kind of disgusting. And I tell them that. And but at the same time, that doesn't mean that we're giving up on the kids that, for whatever reason, didn't get a B average in high school. We had 11,000 transfer students from community colleges come in last year. They had a chance to go to the community college and then come in. Then we're launching a digital high school in this summer that's going to be an attachment to anybody that needs to find a better way to improve their high school performance anywhere. We've got all kinds of things that we're advancing in terms of new technology platforms to help students to find their path to our college or to any college. And so we're not giving up on anybody along the way. We're certainly not consigning someone to a life of low adaptability to the economy that's facing us right now by not allowing them to find some way to advance their educational attainment.
Okay, thank you. We have a few minutes left, and what I'd like to know is, are there questions from the audience? We have 2 tremendous innovators up here. Question.
Hi, I'm a publisher with the American Psychological Association. This is wonderful. I really enjoy the conversation. In funding these new initiatives, what programs or efforts from the universities are you no longer considering or doing or looking to change?
So what's interesting about that, and I'm going to use your own discipline. So, we love Howard Gardner. I love Howard Gardner. We just had him on campus. We believe there are multiple intelligences. We believe in the model of multiple intelligences, and if you believe in the model of multiple intelligences, you do not narrow your offerings. You broaden your offerings. And the reason that you broaden your offering is because you're trying to find learning pathways and learning modalities for all of the types of intelligence that are out there. Now, having said that, along the way, we've eliminated 80 academic units. Those are just administrative decisions, intellectual decisions. And so we've eliminated all kinds of units and formed new departments, new schools, new initiatives, new ways of doing things because we've freed ourselves from the basically completely strange, most academic institutions have become like the post office. They're the same bureaucratic structure as the post office. Unit 1, Unit 2, Unit 3, Level 4, Level 5, this. We don't have that anymore. We've empowered our faculty to be creative, to design new units. Our School for Earth and Space Exploration is an example where they took off. We did away with geology, astronomy, astrobiology, astrophysics, brought those units together, made new things happen. And so that then has created new learning pathways for our students. And so I understand your question was a little bit different than that, but we're not reducing offerings. I will say that we've lowered the cost to produce a degree to the state of Arizona by 75%. And so we have 11 employees per 100 students. Some of our peer institutions have 50 employees per 100 students. And so we've affected efficacy, efficiency, effectiveness. All of these things have been impacted by our ability to empower our faculty to be creative, to empower our faculty to embrace technology, to find a crew of people and a crew of partners that can help us to do this. So we're like a new form, and it's like, hallelujah. You know, we're a new form moving forward.
I just add to that it's interesting. We price our domestic BYU Pathway tuition at our variable cost. And that's $68 a credit hour. And so our sponsoring institution, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, funds our fixed cost. But at $68...
We don't have anybody that funds our fixed costs.
But at $68 a credit hour, our board is indifferent whether I have 50 students or 50,000 students domestically in the United States. There's no funding difference requirement. And that is, in some ways, a tribute to the model we've developed, but in other ways, it's kind of an indictment on higher education, because we can literally price it to the variable cost and then give it to everyone. Now, internationally, that's not true. So our average price per credit hour is $27 a credit hour. In places like Haiti and Ghana, it's $8, $9 a credit hour. That is all subsidized by collections from the church.
And so, yes, we have time for one more, and this will be the last question, but let's go ahead. And by the way, before the microphone gets here, it comes to me that listening to Clark, you know, a lot of universities are thinking about, you know, going out and acquiring for-profit universities or colleges. I think we need to be thinking about acquiring a church. There are a lot of advantages that I see. Please.
$9 a credit hour.
$9 a credit hour and covering the fixed cost and 500 sites. This seems good to me.
Really quick, Dr. Crow, you mentioned something about the summer pathway or summer program that high school students can take advantage of. And I didn't catch the formal name of that, and I think that's a really bright idea.
We have a program. We have a program called the Global Freshman Academy. It has how many courses now, Phil? 11?
13?
10.
We have about 10. We have about 10 courses deployed. Just go to Global Freshman Academy, and these are courses that both get you ready to go to college, they get you prepared to go to college. They help you think about going to college. They help you understand how to get to college. In the case of the math courses, they solve your math bugaboo completely for college algebra and for pre-calculus and all the courses that lead up to that. So it's called Global Freshman Academy. If you do really well and then you want to go ahead and just take the college credit for it, there's no cost unless you want college credit. It's completely free. You're graded and everything happens, but if you want college credit, then there's a cost. And sadly, it's not $9.
And that is for students in the Arizona area?
Anywhere.
No,
Or anywhere? Okay.
Anywhere in the world.
There's hundreds of thousands of people from 192 countries presently engaged in that Global Freshman Academy. We think that by the time we're done, there'll be millions of students everywhere engaged in that thing.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So with that, we're done. I want to thank our two panelists. I thought they were great. Thank you very much, and thanks for your time.